Magdi Kalani report. Now we welcome our guest, barrister Theo Barclay, author of this wonderful book, if we can show it here and show to the viewer, Fighters and Quitters, Great Political Resignations.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming. Tell us about the title.
Yes, so the title's taken from a Peter Mandelson quote, and when he stood
Peter
for Parliament,
Mandelson, yeah, who's Tony Blair's
yes, he was Tony Blair's spin doctor and an MP in Britain. He resigned twice when he was a minister, and he gave a speech very defiantly saying, "I am a fighter and not a quitter." So this is taken from that, but lots of other people have used that phrase since.
I think for our viewers, they will remember people like Robin Cooke, late Robin Cooke, Sir Geoffrey Howe, the resignation thing. So if you could just sort of, what attracted you to this character?
So I think that people who've resigned tend to be risk takers. They tend to be bold politicians, and Robin Cooke is a very good example of that. He resigned in protest against the war in Iraq.
And his resignation changed the view that now we cannot go to war without actually Parliament sanctioning it.
Yes, I mean, I think that was probably created by Blair's decision to have a parliamentary vote, which was not Robin Cooke's responsibility, but his resignation is so famous now, it's probably made it impossible ever to go to war without a vote.
Which again stopped Cameron joining the Americans in bombing Syria.
In Syria, yes.
In 2013. Okay, did you actually include Cameron's resignation outside number 10?
No, so I've not included prime ministers, although he comes into a lot of this, because if you include prime ministers, it's just a history of British politics.
Resignation. Yeah, right, okay. So what's the other one with among our viewers? Other from history, the Christine Keller scandal,
yes.
Or Sir Geoffrey Howe. What's your preference between the two?
Well, I think the John Profumo affair in the early 1960s is the most interesting of all of them, really, because it has everything. It's a sex scandal, it has lying to the Houses of Parliament, there's espionage involved, and it was followed by a judicial investigation into British public morals, which is an extraordinary thing to do. It's a Spanish Inquisition style investigation.
But actually, yes, that was 1960. You probably weren't born, which actually puts really brilliant research in you. While I, old man, I witnessed it, I covered it. But when we look into jump to modern times, then we have the Lord Leveson inquiry that looked into moral issues as well.
Yes, although that was restricted to issues of relations between the press and the public and politicians, and that was much more confined. This was into what the establishment were doing in their private rooms at home, and I think that wouldn't happen now. I think people would be afforded more privacy than that.
We're going to talk about the establishment after the break. We're going to a little break. Stay with us. We'll get back to you. ابقوا معنا نعود إليكم بعد استراحة قصيرة. Thank you very much for staying with us. Just that last item was about the BBC being accused by Stephanie, the working class presenter, that they are actually biased and give the posh girls more money. Should the BBC directors resign?
I'm not sure we'll go that far, but I think the BBC finds itself accused of being biased by almost every aggrieved person in Britain from various different sides. I suspect that this is, if there is a problem, it's more of a mistake than a deliberate bias.
Yeah, but I think she said that other females who are paid less than males, actually, they paid more than her if they are from upper class background, and she is sort of comprehensive.
I think she makes an important point. I think it's widely recognised at the BBC and other public bodies that there needs to be parity between men and women, and I think it's right that that does need to go further to encompass background, because it's so important to promote people from all sorts of backgrounds going into public life.
And on the perjury, we have different characters who actually went to prison, like Lord Archer, and like Jonathan Aitken. That are they in the book?
Yes, they both are mentioned in the book.
Yes.
I think lying in public is a real resignation issue for anybody. So anyone who is caught lying in public, I think
especially if they're in office.
If they're in office, it's curtains, and lying to the House of Commons in particular.
Yeah.
So that's something they.
You're not actually allowed to use the word liar as a comment.
You're not allowed to use the word.
His recollection is flawed, or
yes. But if you are caught independently lying to the House, I think generally the convention is to resign.
And now with Mosley and why he sort of with this impress you and I were last night in the Prime Minister dinner for the Westminster Press, actually our Westminster Press by association, because your good lady wife is our colleague Lucy Fisher.
Yes, I'm not a member myself.
From other times, no, you are actually on our side. You know, we support the rule of law here. What do you think? She had a sense of humour, doesn't she?
I think she was fantastic. I think some were slightly surprised because she gave a very humorous and a very comic speech, and she's been characterised as slightly wooden and robotic, and I didn't see any of that last night. Yeah,
that was sort of a very, very good. I was quite impressed, but I think it was also a commitment, because, you know, on Wednesday, a question was asked in the House of Commons specifically about Impress, about Mosley, about his funding for one of the Labour Party members, Tom Watson, who is for implementing Leveson 2.
He certainly was one of the main campaigners. Leveson 1 when that was around. I think it's a very difficult issue, but I think there is broad support in the Conservative Party for the free press. And I think whatever the rights and wrongs of this particular story, I think that's going to continue. I think it was slightly concerning, we saw last week, Jeremy Corbyn put out a video that hinted at it, dog whistled, it implied that he might take steps against the press.
We covered it last week, that was quite sort of made everyone angry.
It sends a shiver down the spine a bit, I think.
Well, Leveson, of course, is a good publicity and good living making for barristers. But as a barrister, would you like to see Leveson 2?
Personally, I'm not sure it's necessary. But Leveson 2, as I understand it, was going to be restricted to dealings between journalists and police. So it wasn't going to be a rerun of the original inquiry.
There was 22, I think, or 28 million pounds, I have to check it, spent on the investigation leading to Leveson 1 on the police and the relationship with journalists, and the 23 journalists got there, only one is actually indicted, and he's appealing, but it came to nothing. I don't know, it's a waste of taxpayers' money, really.
I think there are issues in the relationships between journalists and police, and actually in the book there's a couple of incidents.
I was just about to ask you, remind us.
Damien Green, who's a minister, a British minister, who his resignation was partially the result of a long dispute with policemen involving briefing journalists as well. And Andrew Mitchell, who also resigned after an altercation with the police.
Because he wanted to take his bicycle through Downing Street Gate.
And he was accused of being rude to the police, and there was a long saga. But what was certainly true about that, whatever he did or did not say, was that there was a bit of a stitch-up, and the police were briefing journalists. So there are questions to be answered, but whether it needs to be in the form of a public inquiry, particularly because the Leveson inquiry, the recommendations were never implemented.
That's right.
So the question is whether there's any...
unimplementable, actually, in our democracy.
Well, that's definitely one view, and I think I think it's going to be interesting to see the flesh on the bones of what Jeremy Corbyn meant last week when he said change is coming.
Okay, as a man who understands law more than anyone else actually in this studio, the laws for the print press, okay, it's almost like you're trying to regulate when the horse and cart. And we are the age now of driverless cars, which is the internet and the website. I mean, it actually doesn't make any sense, because the laws will only apply to the print in this country.
I think there's no state regulation at the moment of print press, and I think that most people consider that to be a good thing. I think social media has made this very, very difficult, because people can say, frankly, defamatory things on social media, and there's no easy way to get at them. And also, often they won't have the resources, so it's not worth suing them. And at the moment, it's down to individuals to go through the courts against individuals who say things that are defamatory. And that's not a great system if there's no reward for doing so. But then again, the question is whether there is an answer to that doesn't involve Parliament regulating the press, which no one should want to see.
Well, I'm very pleased that our learned friends are for the freedom of the press.
I can't speak for them all.
Thank you very much, Theo Barclay, actually, and he was going straight to the temple after that, which is the temple of justice and law in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Theo
for having
Barclay.
me.
Thank you. This is all we have this week, and see you next week. هذا كل ما لدينا هذا الأسبوع. لا تنسوا تتابعونا على الفيسبوك من لندن وعلى تويتر Adel Darwish one word. إلى اللقاء الأسبوع القادم.